engineering is probably the least useful skill in a lot of ways for becoming a CEO. But there's some parts of it that are really good. So why is it the least useful? Well, it's like you actually don't need the CEO to write a lot of code. In fact, it's not that helpful if the CEO is trying to write a lot of code because they're usually not around to like do all the work through to production and support it, right? At best, they kind of fling something from some night coding session and hope somebody like fixes it and makes it work, which nobody really wants to happen. And so the core skill set is actually not a useful thing. But there are some things which are good. One is engineers have to learn a lot of stuff. So you're kind of just on this treadmill of learning new stuff. And usually engineers have high confidence in their ability to learn something. And so if there's something new, they'll just read about it. And, there's a belief that you can do that. And I think that's really important for a CEO because actually it's one of a couple roles that sits across. The CFO is this as well, where you sit across every function. You have to kind of understand how they work. And you probably won't understand it as well as somebody who's run that function for their whole career. But you need to understand it well enough to know if that's going well, if you've hired the right person to do it, to have an opinion on what's needed there, to kind of help it, guide it, and integrate it into the rest of the company. So you need to understand it pretty well. And so if you're not going to spend a lot of your time kind of learning and thinking about things outside of what you already know, it's not going to go well. And then I think as a company gets bigger, I do think that ultimately an organization is a kind of system. And so that kind of system thinking and design, kind of modularity, how does is this module overly coupled to that module? Do we have a good API? What's our observability story for knowing if this thing is working? What's my feedback loop to run this part of the business and know it's on track versus know it's not on track? I think that style of thinking is, extremely important in software engineering. And actually very much what you do for a larger company is definitely, those same kind of things, which is okay. You peer inside a module and try and get it in good shape and working. And then ideally you want to have, what are the outputs of that I can reason about. I know kind of what the input is, like what's the investment and what's coming back. If that's good and it seems like there's somebody we trust running it, then I can just kind of let it run. That's the observability story. And if not, then, maybe I need to get in there and do some profiling and see what, see what's going on. So, I think that's, that's good. And then I think, this is true of engineers generally, and maybe even particularly true of these distributed systems people. It's actually a relatively gritty profession where you spend most of your time on things that are not working. And I think that's true of management roles as well. You spend most of your time fixing problems and trying to get stuff to work. And then once it works, it's like, okay, right, on to the next thing. And so there's some analogy there as well. And so, if you look at people who run tech companies, there's actually a good percentage of engineers, even though the actual core skill set is not that useful. And I think maybe it's for those reasons.